Just a reminder that after the next reading, we'll be taking a brief break to let the groundskeepers straighten out the baselines, and we'll be resuming at exactly 10:30 a.m. tomorrow. We'll start right on time. Fred Waugh was born in a proverbial place called Swift Current, Saskatchewan. He's taken this place name on as a motto of his poetics. One of his books was called Waiting for Saskatchewan, but evidently he got impatient, spending most of his life in British Columbia, where he was an incredible force some 50 years ago now in founding a magazine called Tish, which, if spelled backward and allowing the SH as a single letter, was a word that would no doubt have been frowned upon by his professors at the University of British Columbia. 50 years ago. It's unbelievable. Tish magazine celebrating this anniversary, and with such an incredible impact on North American poetry, and also in particular on the connection between Canadian poetry and the United States poetry. He has an essay book, which is for me a kind of an emblem of my work, and one that I entirely endorse, called Faking It, Poetics and Hybridity, a wonderful book. And without listing all of his books, I want to make the plug for a wonderful and exemplary website that Susan Rudy has created with Fred Waugh, fredwaugh.ca, where you can get a full text of many of his books, sound recordings through Penn Sound and that site, and really experience the full range of this 50 years of writing, which he's laughing because he thinks it's an extraordinary contribution to us all, and I just cannot imagine what the shape of the poetries that I have spent my life being involved in would be without the incredible contribution of Fred Waugh. It is my pleasure to invite you here today.
Years. Well, I'm so happy to be here, and thank you again, Kelly Writers House, and everyone involved for having me back. I was here once before with Louis Cabri's Philly Talks, and, with Brian Kim Steffens a number of years ago. And speaking of which, I wanted to use this occasion to sort of bring Louis into the room. I wish he was here. He's certainly in Philadelphia for me. But I'm going to read tonight a few pieces from a book that Louis edited. He edited a selection of my poetry. And just before Charles was incanting 50 years, I looked at the book to thinking, do I have a poem in here that's 50 years old? Because Louis went right back to the beginning, and the oldest poem I can find is 48 years old, but I was well on my way by then. Anyway, this is a book called The False Laws of Narrative, and I brought a few copies along for those of you who are interested in Louis' work, because my work it's old stuff and that he's collected here, but he's written a wonderful introduction to it, and tomorrow I'm going to talk a little bit about the afterwards that he and I engaged with. But I'll just read a few pieces from this, some of these older poems, and get on to things here. Music at the Heart of Thinking 6. Sentence, the true morphology or shape of the mind, including a complete thought, forever little ridges, little rhythms, scoping out the total picture as a kind of automatic designing device or checklist. Anyone I've found in true thought goes for all solution to the end, concatenates every component within the lines within the picture as a cry to represent going to it with the definite fascination of a game where the number of possibilities increases progressively with each additional bump, Plato thought. Music of the Heart of Thinking 89. I've always had trouble with the ingenious engine as a suffix of graded wanting love or prayer, especially kindergarten stifled kid as a kind of person who might extend racism or even keep me off the block. Your kindred jammed the ocean's cognitive shot freeborn got then, similar to most of the inborn tutelary spirits everywhere, naive seed of an Yalion or old chip off the old rock, that's congenital heart buds gyna-gendered and warped up tighter than a Persian rug, how ginger's almost nicer than being born, but that's just taste. The poem called Syntax. We live on the edge of a lake called echo. I love this notion that noise makes itself. So the lake holds all noise in its depths, and when the dog barks, it gets it from the lake. About 9,000 feet above these lakes, all lakes, there is a geometry of sound, something like Plato's cave of noise. It is from that construct the dog's bark takes shape, a resounding of an earlier bark conditioned by the alpine. History and physics, acoustic paradigms in a bog of algae. When I tell all my cousins and friends about this, they'll come to live on the shores of this lake and clean it up. From the balconies of their summer homes, they'll ask a lot of questions. Anyway, the book's out there. I encourage you to have a look at it, not so much for the poems, but because Louis put his incredible work that he puts into editing and thinking about what he's doing is well worth having a look at. But I'm going to read a few pieces from a book called Isidore, which is the book just prior to this one. And I'm so happy that Lisa did her dog. This poem opens with it's dedicated really to my dog. But to the dogs, dear bear, be aware this door should make you stop and stare. Mostly fur and pretty thick. The bark is gone, but the scent is fixed. Dear dogs, late at night, our hunger is a love that bites. Kick it open, make it slide. Where's a door we haven't tried? And it's a poem that Charles will remember from a number of years ago. Charles has always kind of been there when I have a question to ask. And he answered a question, and this was it. Or this was the result. Sheet music for Charles Bernstein. Why did they say eliminate the negative transparency? Don't mess with Mr. In-Between. Or pandemony? Sit tight and close low, right down to the maximum. Some latch for an onto, maintaining a plus from a pulse. Well then, illustrate. Latch onto the nexus while claiming the crux of the squall. The positive also equals the page. Okay, I'll take the floor. A blendable family, WAH. H, aching. Positively, adverb or not, could be more than the accent outside immigration. Who cares if it does? Doing weather, except why apply for the job if the hinge isn't broken? I have stolen the report and now can't find a door just when I need one, even a sliding door. Side to side cloud, thought Noah. The dark, thought Jonah. What did they do except wait away and never let go? My joys spread. My maximums lost interest. Otherwise, you'll be other. You know, you'll be background, and that makes the word, the door, with difference, doored. The downburst blows away the scene, affirmative by the day. Words out. What I need to do is mess around with Mr. In-Between. I'm going to read a piece of prose, if I can find it. I think it was here. Wow. The Marlin Seafood Grill. It's called the Marlin for two reasons. First, I had this stuffed marlin of my father's. He got it when he worked in Mexico after leaving China around 1902, before he came to Canada. But I also wanted to call it the Marlin to honor my father's brother, Uncle Marlin, who was murdered in Calgary in 1900. His death was one of the reasons my father had to leave home in China. Marlin was murdered in the spring of 1900 by a young boy, the son of the woman he worked for in Calgary. He was only 19 years old, and my father that year was just 16. An old Chinese proverb says, "If one who attains honor and wealth never returns to his original place, he is like a finely dressed person walking in the dark." Ma Lin had been buried in Calgary, but the family wanted his remains, his bones, to bury him next to his ancestors. At that time, there were companies in North America that were involved in the business of returning bodies, but our family couldn't afford to, so they decided to send my father to Canada to get his brother Ma Lin's bones. My father had to work his way across, and the first work he got was on a boat going halfway around the world to the Caribbean. But he also liked to gamble too much, and he ended up cooking in a restaurant in Merida in the Yucatan for a couple of years before he earned enough to get passage to Canada. He made it to Canada in 1904, but the head tax was so high he ended up without money and had to find work. At first he cooked on the boats around Vancouver, but he also liked to bet on the horses, so his gambling habits kept getting in the way of recovering Ma Lin's bones from the graveyard in Calgary. He got involved in a bunch of different Chinese cafes in Western Canada, and after he married a white woman, my mother, a cashier in one of his cafes. He never did finish the job he was sent to Canada to do. That was left to me, and it wasn't until 1951, a few years after they changed the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1947, that I was able to get Ma Lin's bones and take them back to China. I met a few people still living from his family, but they were still so poor I gave the bones to the Kwan Family Association, which was happy to bury them in the family graveyard near Canton. But when anyone comes into the Marlin Seafood Grill here in Banff, they think that big fish on the wall is the real name of the restaurant. But for me and our family, it's the Ma Lin. We thought of calling it Chinaman's Peak after that mountain in Canmore, but people here are still a little prejudiced, and we thought it wouldn't be such good luck for business. Besides, seafood in Banff in the mountains is a real treat, a specialty. You got to do things that are good luck, even if you're not a gambler. Like that umbrella up there on the wall, that's good luck too. My half-cousin in Merida sent that to me. It was her wedding umbrella. She married a Japanese guy, and in Japan it's good luck to be married under an umbrella. It's from Japan, but the white people here just think we're all the same. Once in a while on Fridays we serve marlin a la marlin. It's really swordfish, but even that's getting hard to find this far north. Okay, I'm gonna read a piece that just it was There are some people talking about it tonight, but it's an old piece called Race to Go. What's your race? And she said, what's your hurry? How about it, Caucasian man? I'm just going for curry. You ever been to ethnicity? How about multi-culti? You ever lay out skin for the white gaze? What are you, banana or egg? Coconut, maybe? Something wrong, Charlie Chim Chong Say Wong Lung Chung? You got a slant to your marginal eyes? You want a little rice with that garlic? Is this too hot for you? Or slimy, or bitter, or smelly, or tangy, or raw, or sour? A little too dirty on the edge, hiding underneath, crawling up your leg, stuck between the fingernails? Is that a black hair in your soup? Well, how you want to handle this? You want to maintain a bit of difference, keep our mother's other, use the father for the fodder? What side of John A. MacDonald's tracks you on anyway? How fast you think this train is going to go? I'm going to read a poem for Roy Meekie, who was supposed to be here, but this is a piece in this book written for a thing called the Meekie Mash, or Meekie Bash, we had a few years ago in Vancouver when Roy retired. It's called Abdejection. Desperate the fact that the verb waits to act at the end of the sentence. To still think on feet, one of those sweet bouquets, green grass bent into mud, pierced tools, a me holds on to, the years as an exercise in syntax, the foreign sound of someone else's motor grinding a shared sadness, communal consonants, hum of the core semiotic, we that feels the archive behind the wheel, tread of tire or foot, black rubber shadow mimics the emperor's overcoat and hat. The mud of British Columbia's spring epic breakup, hollow board walking, doesn't mean a thing, even as complete thought parks itself in a circle to predict the predicate. I can't understand it if you don't feel like talking. Empty or run on empty, race or bet on raceway. Gray skies turned black. You're one of they. Just turn your back and walk away. He's not his photo. He's not his car. He's not that happy land that's gone to war. Surrender's just the verbal sign to raise your arms, the sentence exercise to touch your toe. This is a piece called Bright Light of the Shipwreck for a friend, a mutual friend of many of us, Peter Quarterman. Held to be wild, as to be cross-checked by the many, eachness always intact for any dialect. Any torrent, any litters, any long plural stoop, boneless potatoes, common sense of the street lamp. That's the truth about melodies, the universal ones, who live among the beaches and nurse. Scrape, scrape, a long day for the workmen and a long day for their women waiting for their soft passion, oh, to spend the next day nesting, just far enough from Hastings to enjoy the silences of your residential fold, far enough from the container cranes, just far enough from the supply depots of relevance, the symbols for being numerous. And I'd just like to finish with two pieces, but one of them is a recent piece to Omar Khadr. I don't know if in America, in the United States, if you've heard of Omar Khadr. He's the only Canadian in Guantanamo. I think he's the only one, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think he just was sentenced to, what, I don't know, 15 years, but he's going to spend 5 years, and they're going to put him back in prison in Canada or something. Anyway, young Canadian from Pakistan, I believe. He's Pakistani. Okay, Omer Kadar. 13, you will do this. 14, and come back, propelled by the grenades of Texas, that dirt that awaits a face, those bullets that still the father, and as the mother calls out deep, high into the voice air. 15, slobbering democracy repeats, yeah, now scars how states own their own memory. The scouts of Subway, prepared and wet for your dream, yet avalanche or flesh with hate, so rare, yet dirt. 16. Poetry will rehabilitate. It will memorize and track the soul vortex of Don Valley Parkway, not your shore. 17. A deck of cards, a bird, a man, a deck of birds, a card, a man, a deck, a man, a bird, a card, the deck. 18. Commit to this text. Know this test, e.g., junta is the commission. Omit that's all she wrote. You can be asked about your mother. 19. Is father the bird? 20. Call home. Why don't you get lost? Hello and goodbye. A state of camp. That line is always busy. 21. A legal move in defense of repetition. That is the way poetry remembers. But don't trust games, because that is how we pretend to collect the evidence. 22. Unanimous and emptied of an eye. 23. The mirrors of detention are just the edge of calling. Out of the air, some terrors look back to the soldiering of invention home free. And I'd just like to finish with a poem by Nicole Brassard, who will join me up here. This is a transcreation, translation, as Aaron might say, of a piece that, here's the full text here if you want it.
Oh, no, I think it's...
Okay. This is actually collected in a poem, Mobility of Light, the poetry of Nicole Brassard, another selected, which came out in Canada, edited by Louise Forsyth. And the publisher asked me to bring this copy along to show people. They didn't get copies down here, but I did bring some order sheets, so if you're interested in ordering a copy, I think there's a good deal on the sheet if you're an American. But
Thank you.
so this is a piece I call If Yes, Sismal, and she calls
Si sismal. Si aboyer ou noyer la voix parmi les images et les mots éveille un peu de crainte, abrite alors la figure choisie, le bord renversé de vivre, label spacieux.
If above the clismic bark heaves, noise the voice detonates images and words for life a little crazy, we think but all right before the actual figures choose choice, the border labels space in you.
Si quelque tissu de soie persiste sur les lèvres et trop excite, respire d'un air naturel. Même si demain va vite dans l'anatomie, cherche d'autres récits.
If any persistent tissue bristles pit-a-pat on the heart's much too excited lip, could be the air's too rare, as naturally some same body remembers too late to search for another wave.
Si à petits coups de langue, d'expression, la tension continue, rapproche les mots crus, l'horizon, s'il le faut, jusqu'en la bouche.
If a small cup of language soups in tension with a continued expression against word crust until the horizon of approach, whose fault, whose lips? If the forest of the voice transforms into the trope of chaos, or melancholy installs itself in the parlor of surprise plant, variety, re-speak, pond.
si ça recommence et qu'il fait chaud, trop chaud encore dans la jointure, appuie partout sur le quotidien. Il reste de grands trous, des saveurs inexplicables, baies, corail, littorine.
If the seesaw bounces back hot to trot, trembling shows up again, late cell, synapse, applied part out on a day of rest, great truth, a vague smack of the lips, gulfs, choral, literal.
Si, tu trembles, tu vois bien. Forcément, il y a du blanc, c'est vrai, et forcément, tu trembles.
If you tremble, you should see inevitably there is some white. It is true, and of course you tremble. I'm sorry.
Si, tu trembles,
If you tremble,
tu vois
you
bien.
should see
Forcément,
inevitably there
il
is
y a du
some
blanc,
white. It
c'est
is
vrai,
true, and of
et
course
forcément,
you
tu
tremble.
trembles.
Thank you.